Sometimes we forget why we're here. It's easy to fall off track. These help us remember.
These battle scars don't look like they're fading, don't look like they're ever gone away. They ain't never gonna change. These battles.
Growing up, I had a dream, something no one else could see. Tell me what it means when your faith is falling beneath your knees and you can't breathe. Everything you see reminds you of what you're not or something you won't be. You gotta take what you're given, that's how we live it. Don't be mad at the system, it's simply how we've existed. I hear a lot of people talking like they politicians and choose to be an accountant because it's safe in a business. Not because they wanna do it, just because they heard it pays. And who the fuck wants to be poor knowing that's how we've been raised? Society is getting heavy, I can feel the weight. The pressure of success is like 100 million pounds of shame. And that's the reason I'm staying up late, trying to find a way to escape the stereotypes this day and age is making me feel like the only way I'll be happy is getting signed to a label and making money through rapping. I wanna share my emotion because this world is attacking the very principle of life that lets the people be happy. If you don't have a reason to breathe, why even live? These battle scars are impressions of everything that it is.
Don't look like they're fading, don't look like they're ever gone away. They ain't never gonna change. These battle scars don't look like they're fading, don't look like they're ever gone away. They ain't never gonna change. These battles.
Now, if I had a voice that reached 100 million people, I'd tell them there's a reason that we're all created equal. Cause some decide to be great and some decide a sequel to an average person's life is simply what they want to be. So you make your decision, all I know is what I'm given. Won't define the life I lead or the way I dwell in existence. I've seen a greater image on the walls of where I'm living, and the words twisted and scripted remind me of something written. Faith is a gift that is given down to the people. If one believes it, one receives it. It's given if it is needed. Don't ever think you're trapped in a life that you never wanted. Your options are infinite, that's some mathematical logic. I'm not saying I'm a prophet, I'm speaking for what it's worth. These lyrics define my prayers and these battle scars on my church. Not saying I'm a prophet, I'm speaking for what it's worth. These lyrics define my prayers, these battle scars on my church.
Don't look like they're fading, don't look like they're ever gone away. They ain't never gonna change. These battle scars don't look like they're fading, don't look like they're ever gone away. They ain't never gonna change. These battles.
Okay, I thought this would happen. Let me go here. Here we go. Yeah, I didn't reset up from that, oh my goodness, that excruciating show we had yesterday. Sorry about that. I mean, it was needed, but God, was that painful. Any of you who have PTSD from that show, all I have to say is objection, speculative. My goodness, this is not going to be a long show tonight. You guys, oh my goodness, if you had seen my day. What glasses? These glasses? I have multiple glasses, so that's what happened to them. Sorry, I'm talking with Dave if people don't know. Oh, what happened to my grifting? I don't have my grifting up. Well, we're not going to worry about that right now because, again, I'm trying to keep this show relatively short because today was get up, go to work, come back from work, have a 2-hour convention oversight committee meeting. I ended that convention oversight committee meeting 2 minutes before the show was to start, run downstairs, turn on the studio lights, get the studio set up, and start the show. And yeah, you like my new pink flame decor here? Okay, so today we are back on LP history, which is what I prefer doing rather than the Liberty. The Liberty is not what I prefer. I like to just bury my head in history, and that's what we're going to do tonight. It won't be, I don't think at least, a terribly long show. We are going to be covering the political perspective portion of LP News from January, February 1974. I haven't read it ahead of time. I only read the title to know what would be an appropriate thumbnail image for YouTube here. I know what was going on at the time. You know, Watergate was breaking, and there was a lot of campaign finance reform in the air that ended up screwing us over. I don't think any of it passed as of the time of this, but I believe they knew it was coming, so they started talking about it. So this is our topic for tonight. So let me get this up on the screen for you all. And remember, this is participatory, and I thank Dave for keeping me company. Okay, the political perspective. Here we go. And it actually goes, where's, not next scene, where's my next PDF page? Did I mess that up? Oh, here we go. It actually goes to this page. You can see, like, almost the whole first column. So that's what we're covering today. So political perspective, which is usually, oh, this was written by Eric Scott Royce. Remember, for like the past 3 issues of LP News that we've covered, I kept mentioning the Royce Report. That is Eric Scott Royce, who was an LNC member at that time. Remember, the LNC was called the Executive Committee, but he was an Executive Committee member at that time. I think he was a regional representative. We've had regional representatives, which I don't think, I want to scrap that whole idea, but we've had them since the beginning of this party. We've experimented from anywhere from 10 to 20 regions, I think we had at one time. I think at this time we had 20 freaking regions. But anyway, Eric Scott Royce of the Royce Report wrote this. And it looks pretty information dense. So let's see what we come up with here. And it's political perspective number 14, federal campaign financing, a plan to feed Goliath and starve David. Anytime you hear about campaign finance reform that's supposed to help the little person, never helps the little person, always helps the ravenous beast. Nearly always. I can't think of an exception. There might be one that you all can think of, but in general, that's been what I found, and that seems like that's going to be the thesis of this political perspective. So let's start. Oh my goodness. I just read the first sentence and I already know I'm going to hate the topic. I don't mean that like I'm going to hate reading this. I mean, I'm going to have the same opinion, I'm sure, as the author. It's talking about public financing of election campaigns. A lot of people think that is that is the answer. I know in Arizona, there's certain requirements. I don't know if it's still in effect, but they called it like clean campaign law or something like that, where if you agreed to certain restrictions, you got your campaign publicly financed. But isn't that always the case? It comes with strings attached. I do not believe that the government itself should be involved in electing itself. Like, that's why I've totally gotten bored with D. Frank Robinson of being opposed to the Australian ballot. Ballots should not be pre-printed by the state. Anyway, so this looks like it's going to mostly deal with public financing of election campaigns, which some states have, and we still kind of have on the federal level with that checkbox with you on your income tax return. I could do a whole show on that, where if you get over 5%, and that's why everyone says the magic number of 5% for the LP. We want our candidate to get 5%. Why? So they could suck the government tit and get that sweet, sweet public financing money. I think you all can tell by the way I've worded it, I am opposed to that. I wish our bylaws would say that any candidate who takes that is disqualified. We have had candidates qualify for it in the past. Harry Brown qualified for that both times, and he refused the money. And you want to know what he said? And he's right. He got more publicity than he could have bought with that money by refusing it. So, anyway, public financing of election campaigns is not a new idea. Teddy Roosevelt proposed it, but it is a dubious and dangerous one. I agree. Passage of public financing legislation would mean that our tax dollars would be turned over to political candidates to pay for their campaigns. In other words, we would no longer be forced to support only the winners and the bureaucratic morass they have created. We would be stuck subsidizing the election antics of all the politicians. I didn't even think of it that way. The frightening thing is that such legislation is already, in part, on the books, and that the Senate overwhelmingly adopted a major public financing proposal recently. I guess we're going to find out what this is, because I'm not aware of what this is talking about. On November 27th, Senator Kennedy, and that would be November 27th, 1973, Senator Kennedy and some 35 co-sponsors brought to the floor an amendment to the federal debt ceiling bill that would have done the following things: expanded the $1 income tax form checkoff and created a special fund in the Treasury for money received as a result. I guess this passed because this seems like what we have now, doesn't it? Employed this money to finance the campaigns of candidates for federal offices, including presidential primary contestants, presidential candidates, and congressional candidates in the general election. 3, paid for any deficit between allocations to such candidates and checked off funds by direct appropriation from the Treasury. 4, discriminated between candidates of quote-unquote major parties and those of quote-unquote new or quote-unquote minor parties, and setting the formula for allocation of funds under the Act. 5, banned virtually all private donations to candidates, except to candidates in congressional primaries, candidates for presidential nominations, here, public funds would be allocated on a matching basis after receipt of $100,000, no donation to be larger than $100, close paren, quote-unquote minor and new, unquote, party candidates, or to state and national party committees. The total of any such committee could receive or expend was also limited under a set formula. 6, set spending limits for each type of federal campaign in each state. Man, the state's getting its sticky fingers in this, isn't it? 7, provided stiff penalties for violations. 8, provided that these provisions would go into effect beginning with the 1974 election. Woof! Looks like some of this stuff passed, though, but let's see. The amendment was attached, and it's funny, this is an amendment attached to a federal debt ceiling bill. What does that have to do with that? I hate these sneaky tactics. And I used to say, as a libertarian, I hate these sneaky tactics, but looking at the sneaky tactics that have been pulled by the likes of Chris Crawford in the llama drama issue, I no longer don't know, I can't tell if up is up anymore with the corruption in the Libertarian Party. Drain the Libertarian swamp, people. The amendment was attached to the bill on a series of votes. An attempt to kill it with fire, drew only 36 votes with 59 opposed. Several of those 36 senators opposed the measure not because they were against public financing, but only because they disagreed with various provisions of the bill or felt that it went too far too quickly. The Kennedy amendment was stricken from the bill a week later, but only after a courageous filibuster led by Senator James Allen, Democrat of Alabama. Even then, had the authorization for the present federal debt level not expired during the filibuster, threatening the government with bankruptcy, the amendment would have probably passed. Well, you might say, if public financing was voted down, what have you got to worry about? The problem is that part of the deal made when the amendment was stricken from the debt bill was that it would be duly considered and reported to the floor by spring. But at least it's being considered on its own. Okay, I will say that is a plus. I don't like this bill, but at least it's not attached to something entirely unrelated. The monster is not dead. It is only sleeping, like Cthulhu. And they didn't have like Cthulhu. That was me. And separated from the complex debt ceiling bill situation, it will pass unless public opinion can be mobilized against it. Fighting public financing ought to be a project of every state party this spring. Why should the Libertarian Party be particularly concerned about this legislation? First, public financing is a serious abridgment of rights guaranteed under the First Amendment. Prohibiting virtually all private donations violates the right of free political expression. Even Senator Stevenson, a supporter of public financing and a co-sponsor of the Kennedy Amendment, recognized this during the debate. Speaking on an amendment he offered, which would have softened prohibitions on individual donations, he stated, It would not be constitutional to say to every individual in this country, you cannot contribute 1 cent or $1 or $5. At some point, it becomes constitutional to limit contributions. Well, disagree. That is the cause of my quarrel with the amendment introduced by Senator Kennedy, which prohibits all individual contributions except limited circumstances. That is unconstitutional. And hello, Jeff, I see you there in Twitch. I would be inclined to contend that any limitation on an individual's right to contribute infringes his right of free political expression, but certainly the sort of prohibitions that Kennedy and his supporters are urging violates the First Amendment. I'm very familiar with using the First Amendment to talk about political free speech because it was the argument used in the case I won against the state of Colorado in their prohibition against ballot selfies. So and it was a multi-partisan effort. We won that lawsuit against the state of Colorado based upon our right of political free speech. We should be concerned too, because public financing will have a real impact upon the party's chances of winning elections. The Kennedy plan, which has the most support on Capitol Hill, and most other such plans all discriminate in setting allocations. Major parties automatically receive a large amount of public funds, while smaller parties and independents, if they want such money, are entitled to only limited amounts. Thus, non-established contenders must still use large amounts of time and effort in locating funds, while the established opposition moves ahead with the campaign. Such discrimination will open up additional avenues for a constitutional challenge, of course. But should such a law be upheld, once it has been in effect for some time, it will become harder to solicit money or to win such money, since private contributions will be severely limited, and let's go to the next page, in size, and will tend to become suspect. Furthermore, the Kennedy plan is drawn in such a way as to benefit incumbents. Go figure. The people in power are writing bills to benefit themselves. That never happens. State parties never expel people for just signing petitions because those people who signed the petition would vote their asses out. That never happens. Finally, public financing is a direct contradiction of what the Libertarian Party is attempting to accomplish. I wish people today would realize that. The people who are so hungry for us to get 5% so we could suck the government's tit, my God. Like, I'm going to do a whole show on why that's a bad idea. Besides the philosophical reasons, there are very strong pragmatic reasons why we should never take that money. The liberation of America from the grasp of the traditional politicians. The public itself seems to be moving away from them now in the light of Watergate. A mid-September, again 1973, Gallup poll showed that some 33% of the American people no longer identify with either of the two established parties. You know, we've kept getting encouraged by that for such a long time, but we're talking 50 years ago they hated the two parties, and the two parties are still here. I begin to think that most of the voting public must be masochists, political masochists. And only a few percent of those who paid taxes last year used the $1 checkoff, an indication that the taxpayers are less than eager to be forced to pay for the politicians' campaigns. Just one thing I want to add here, because there is a lot of confusion. That $1 checkoff is not a voluntary contribution. You are paying that $1 whether you check that box off or not. What it is an earmark. Now, I like earmarks, so in that sense, but do you think that if, say, $1 million was earmarked away, that they wouldn't just raise that $1 million another way? They're not going to go without that $1 million. In my view, you selecting that earmark, though you have every right to do that if you wish, is an indirect way of raising taxes on everybody else if enough people did it. I do not check that off. I used to in the past because I thought it was voluntary. Like, I didn't realize all of this, and plus I used to be a big fat statist. Public financing abolishes the right to refrain from participation in politics. Wow, that's a good point. Because the right to vote and the right to participate entails the right not to vote and the right not to participate. The right, oh, see, he continues. I'm not even reading ahead. I like when what I just said is what's said next. I know you guys probably think I'm reading ahead, but I'm not. I just know the rhetoric, I guess, really well. The right to participate or not participate in the political marketplace of ideas. At present, individuals can refrain from donating to the depressing established candidates. Man, my arm's killing me. Like even just going to scratch my nose like hurt. For those of you who don't know, this arm is broken. And it's healing, but very painfully. Where was I? Under public financing, we will be forced to subsidize the balloons, empty leaflets, and smiley face commercials of them all. No one likes the present political corruption, but the answer to it is not in further campaign reform legislation. Corruption will continue as long as the government holds the power to tax, regulate, and dispense favors. Why? Excuse me. I don't want to be having a bat in the cave, you know what I mean? Why is there corruption in the Libertarian Party? We have neither money nor real power. For this like bullshit power that isn't even real power, we're allowing ourselves to be corrupted. I don't get it. I don't get it. No one... Oh, yeah, okay, I already said that. Okay. Where were we? As long as there is big government, there will be interests which will attempt to use it to their advantage. And I lost my spot again. Oh, the solution is to cut back the size and authority of government, not to impose new regulations. Amen. At worst, it would be better to place our trust in a skeptical. I'm mispronouncing that, aren't I? I'm like having tongue-tied tonight. Skeptical. That's right. That sounds weird to me, though. Public and the investigative reporting of an unrestricted press than to impose panaceas, which will further erode American liberties. Public financing is a road away from, rather than toward, freedom. It is incumbent upon us as libertarians to oppose it with all the resources at our command. I wish the party today had the courage to say things like this. But the party today, at least the National Party, doesn't have the courage to constantly scream from the rooftops against the COVID regime. And that one email that started out great that went out ended up being a little nanny scold to people who chose not to be vaccinated. Or refused, however you want to put it. All right, Dave Davis says that's true about the checkoff. It started as $1. It affected people's tax returns when they first did it. Fewer and fewer people are checking it off. And I used to be a sucker who checked it off. I think I'm going to do a whole show on that because a lot of people do not understand that. A lot of libertarians do not understand that. And Susan Seymour says, paid for the corruption? That's the way politics work, I've been told. Well, the Libertarian Party is bending over and lifting up its skirts and not even getting paid. Listen, if you're going to whore yourself, get paid, you know? But right now, yeah, wow. What's going on in the party today is just, I sure hope Reno changes things. But that is it for today. I have been nonstop. Excuse me. Let me take a drink of my soda. I've been nonstop since I woke up this morning. It's been crazy. So let me go eat dinner. Let's finish this. I've got a couple parliamentary opinion letters to write. And then my pink butt wants to go to bed. I have not gotten a full night's sleep in a while now. And I still got a lot of work to do to get ready to be parliamentarian for the Libertarian Party of New Hampshire convention. But that is it for this evening. Tomorrow, let's see. Tomorrow, I think we will go over. We're going to do probably more history tomorrow. I don't want to do, unless something really dramatic, comes up that I have to respond to. I just want to bury my head in history for a while. So tomorrow, I think we're going to do spotlight on state parties. because that's always cool to see how the state parties have grown. All right, everyone. Thank you so much. I hope you have an awesome evening. Mi guapas de libertad.
Gotta take what you're given, that's how we live it. Don't be mad at the system, it's simply how we've existed. I hear a lot of people talking like they politicians and choose to be an accountant because it's safe.